Welcome back to Goat Duels, everyone. I'm ACP. I promised you all recently in a post that I was going to give you the source code to the Goat Duels dueling simulator. I'm still doing that. It's right up here on your screen. I don't know, somewhere around here. There's a GitHub link. It's going to be in the description, in the pinned comment, and all that stuff. So if you just want the GitHub, you just want to see the source code, you can go ahead and do that. And I don't know, not watch the rest of this video, I guess. But this video is going to be kind of like two parts. I'm going to spend the first part of the video, again, showcasing sort of some of the features that I like about Goat Duels and giving sort of advice / recommendations on, hey, here's where someone could go from here. Here are the parts of the code that you might be able to use for your own project, even if it's like, you know, totally different than what I'm going for. And then the second part is I'm going to explain, you know, where I go from here. So let's go ahead and log in. Hopefully it works. It'd be awkward if it didn't, right? If I was just making this video and it just didn't let me log in. But, yeah, any day now. Okay, it did in fact let me log in. I was getting worried there. So, you know, there's a few things that I think are like really big and significant. So one of the things is that every GOAT format card in this simulator has problem-solving card text. And for those that are maybe like old school players, or maybe you don't play a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh! And like you just don't really know what that is, problem-solving card text, it's basically a sort of systematic way of formatting the text of cards such that, like, if, you know, two cards have the same text, they always work the same way. Because believe me, back in 2005, you just couldn't read a card and tell how it worked. So every card's text actually reflects what the card does in GOAT format, which is really nice. So, you know, there's some cards like Dark Balter the Terrible is like probably one of the better examples. And, you know, if we look at our fusion deck, and that's another cool feature, you know, we look at Dark Balter, there he is. You know, you'll see here that the problem-solving card text reflects how the card actually works, because this card like hasn't been reprinted in like 15 years or whatever the hell, never got problem-solving card text. So people were like confused, like, oh, is the paying to negate effect mandatory, and so on and so forth. Makes it clear that it's not. And another cool part about how card texts work is like if you hover over a part of the card text, it goes like, oh, this is a summon condition, this is a quick effect, this is a continuous effect, and so on. So I think like the nice thing about a dueling simulator that would be focused on GOAT form is that you have the opportunity to do that. Make cards worded like how they actually work in GOAT format. And, you know, another thing you'll see here with the fusion deck is that, you know, I think any good piece of software is going to try to minimize wasted time and effort on part of the user, the customer, etc. So the fact that when you play GOAT format on Dueling Book, you like add 15 cards to your fusion deck, but then like in the middle of the game, you can like add more. That's like it's just very not user friendly. So the fact that here like every fusion is, you know, just automatically put in your fusion deck, we can filter by level because the most common way to summon fusions in the format is metamorphosis, right? That's all quite nice and convenient, and I like it. And we even have this thing that, you know, sorts between meta targets and non-meta targets. You know that, okay, I can't get like a Dark Paladin off Metamorphosis because it's not a legal meta target. That, again, is nice. I'm not going to talk about like every single little feature. I'm just going over the major ones. You know, another thing that I got positive feedback on, if anything, like more positive than I was expecting, is just the overall look and feel of the cards itself. When I put together the simulator originally, I just kind of like slapped together just kind of like a generic like card format, and people were like, oh, this is horrible. But then I got ideas like, well, what if we made it look like this? What if we made it look like that? And then we sort of settled on this like anime style cards here, where you got like, the level stars, the attribute, the art, the attack, defense, and so on. So even if you were like working on something that maybe wasn't GOAT format related, maybe wasn't even like a Yu-Gi-Oh simulator, maybe it's like a deck builder app or something, I think this is something you could easily use, right? Have this sort of cool style of cards. A lot of people seem to like that. Then the last thing that I'll mention is the drag and drop, right? We just sort of drag cards here. If we drag a trap, it knows to set it. We can drag things back to our hand. And yeah, that was also received pretty well. Like after people got used to it, it's a little weird because like at first, like a lot of the criticism that I was getting is like, oh, this isn't exactly like Dueling Book. Like, why do you have drag and drop? Dueling Book doesn't have drag and drop. And, for most digital card games, drag and drop is kind of like the industry standard, especially for people on mobile devices. The way that Dueling Book does it, where like you hover over a card, it gives you a list of choices, then you click one. Like it's way too like slow, easy to mess up. Whereas this, we can just kind of play all our cards super fast. Which is nice, like just the overall speed of the simulator. And I'm not talking about like lag and latency and that stuff. I'm just talking about the speed at which you can physically play cards is much higher compared to something like Dueling Book. And, again, just given how prevalent drag and drop is in the industry, I think that's something that you would want to go with. And in general, I did have people say like, oh, you should just make a simulator that's like exactly like Dueling Book. And whether we're talking about, making a game or anything else, having the idea of, oh, I'm going to make a product that is exactly like my competitors is just not what any intelligent builder of anything does. Like, if I was building a car, I like Toyotas, but I wouldn't say to myself, oh, I'm starting a car company. I'm going to just try to make a car that's like as close to a Toyota Corolla as possible. Because what would be the point of that? The idea is that I go, well, here are the things that I like about the Toyota Corolla. Here's what I think makes it such a great car, that's been popular for decades and decades. I'm going to take those things that make it a great car, but then I'm going to add in my own ideas that can make it even better. So yeah, I did take some things from Dueling Book. In the way the layout is similar, like you've got, the thing up in the top left corner that shows a bigger picture of the card, but then a lot of things are different as well. And, there's some like automated things. Like if we go search Thunder Dragon here, I can just look at our deck and it just shows me, oh, here are your Thunder Dragons, right? It doesn't show me like all the other cards, which is like a nice little convenient thing. And that's, you could add your own little convenient things, it's far from the only one. So yeah, overall, like not too much to talk about. I would go ahead and check out the code. I will mention, I talked about this in my previous video. A lot of what I'm saying here won't make sense if you didn't watch the previous video. So go watch it. It's called, I'm giving up on GOAT format, and then I'm going to go jump off a bridge. Now that the jumping off the bridge part isn't in the title. But, I think some people like kind of misinterpreted that last video, or not even misinterpreted, but like added stuff on top of that. Like I would say something and then people might assume like, oh, he said this because of that. Really, the reason that I'm not continuing to build this simulator, because I've already made a lot of progress, is really just because of the fact that I think the effort isn't worth the reward. Now, that is a sort of subjective assessment. You could disagree, obviously, and I hope someone does disagree, and I hope they go finish up the simulator. But, I hate to say it, but I'm not that great of a programmer. I mean, I was kind of like in that middle ground where like, I did it for a living. I made 6 figures a year doing it, but I was never one of the best programmers on like any job that I was on, any team that I was on. So like I was good enough to be passable, where people felt it, okay, well, he's good enough to make it worth paying him, but I was never like a super dev, right? I was never like one of these people where it's like I was just carrying the team. If anything, like a lot of the team was always helping me more than I was helping them. So, for someone who's not a super dev, it takes quite a lot of effort to make like a full-fledged online game. If it was super easy, everyone would be doing it, right? Like, think of how many gamers have had some game that they've wanted to create, right? Like, oh man, it would be sick if there's this game that did this, this, and this. Well, none of those people go create that game because it takes a ridiculous amount of effort. And if I were to continue to get this simulator, to get it to like where, I really liked it and was like proud of the product and thought like, man, this is just like great in every way, it would probably take another 10,000 hours of me coding. And, given that sort of online GOAT format, there's not some big market there, right? It's not like, oh, if I finish this simulator, I'm going to, be a millionaire and I'm going to sell my game, to Tesla or something, right? It's not going to happen, right? So for me, it would require a tremendous amount of effort to finish. The reward would be fairly limited. And that's why, like, I'm stopping. That's it. Like, it's really no more, like, complicated than that. Like, I know people were, like, adding on their own theories, but, like, it's really just effort versus reward. But as I said, I hope that someone takes what I've done, adds onto it. Even if you like took this and decided like, hey, you know what? I'm an Edison format player. I'm going to take Alan's code, and instead of that, I'm going to make like an Edison format dueling simulator. I wouldn't be upset. I wouldn't be like, no, you can't do that. I made this for GOAT format, not Edison format. You can't. No, like, I don't give a shit. You can use it however you want, guys. So yeah, hopefully that explains where I'm coming from. Now, to sort of like build onto that, this is when we go into the second part of the video. I think psychologically, like, I've never been what I would consider like a hard worker. I've always been more of like a work smarter, not harder kind of guy, which is like, the nice way of saying that I'm lazy. And, I've realized that, psychologically, the higher like the goals and aspirations you set for yourself, the harder it is to push yourself to reach that goal. So like, I'll give you an example, right? Like, say, I'm someone who's like really out of shape, and I'm, maybe I'm like watching some videos on YouTube of like some guy who's like a bodybuilder, right? Some guy is just super jacked, looks like, a model or a bodybuilder, whatever. And I go, I want to look like that guy. And I've never been to the gym before, but my goal is to look, exactly like that guy does. Well, what happens, and this happens a lot, is that people go to the gym for like a couple of months and they go like, wow, I've barely made any progress. It's going to take years and years and years to get anywhere close to what that guy looks like. And, I've got to go to the gym, 4 or 5 times a week, an hour a day each time I go. I might need to get like a personal trainer, and they go like, okay, well, what's the point then? And it's like, obviously there's a middle ground. There's always a middle ground between like your absolute like highest aspirations and just giving up. And in my last video, I kind of made it sound like I was giving up. I mean, I wasn't trying to mislead you. That was how I felt at the time. But I feel like maybe there's some sort of middle ground between me trying to build a full-fledged dueling simulator and just feeling like the end is just nowhere near in sight. I think there's middle ground between that and just kind of like dicking around and doing nothing. So I'm actually working on a new project, and it's called GOAT Light. Now, what is GOAT Light? That's basically just a name that I gave it to remind myself of what it is intended to do. I don't know what it is, but I'll tell you what it's not. It's not a GOAT format dueling simulator or any sort of dueling simulator. Basically, my idea behind GOAT Light is that in my spare time, I'm going to code up some useful utilities for people that are GOAT format players, or maybe you're running GOAT format tournaments or something like that. So this is like the first utility that I made. Only took me like a few hours. And basically what this does is it takes a Dueling Book deck list that you feed into it via URL, and it takes the web page, scrapes all the cards off, formats a deck list, in a more readable form, and then tells you if it's GOAT format legal and what deck type it is. So I'll run that here just to show you an example. Sometimes if Dueling Book is being really laggy, it takes forever, or it doesn't work at all because it is taking too long to find the web page. But what this is doing here is, it's a bot that's visiting this URL, and it's going to grab all the cards off the web page, and then from there, it prints out the deck list, tells you what is wrong with it, if anything, and then it says, what deck it is. And you'll see there it even says, there's an error in loading the Dueling Book page. Perhaps it's down right now. That just means that, some lag is going on. But yeah, once, we try a few times, the page will load properly. It'll grab all the cards. It'll print off all the cards, and then it'll tell us what our deck is. So what I did for this example here is I actually just made a GOAT control deck in Dueling Book, and then I deleted a card. I just got rid of a metamorphosis. So what it'll do here is it'll grab all the main deck cards, grab all the side deck cards. It won't grab the fusions because, as we know, that is irrelevant. And then it'll tell us, hey, this GOAT deck isn't legal because it is only 39 cards. And then it'll tell us that, yes, this is in fact a GOAT control deck. So, so let's go back. So yeah, you'll see that it did work now. It grabbed all the cards. It goes, here's the main. It's in the same order that it was on the Dueling Book page. Here's the side, again in the same order. And it says your main deck has less than 40 cards, only 39. If we fed it something different, if I fed it an Edison format deck, which I've tried doing, it'll go oh yeah, 30 of the cards in your deck aren't legal in GOAT format. I'm okay. And yeah, you'll say here it tells us that it is GOAT control. I kind of put together a, obviously algorithm that's not perfect at determining what deck type something is. And, if you feed 1,000 decks into it, it'll probably get one or two wrong. But, for the most part, it works. And again, what am I going to do with this? Don't know. Remains to be seen. I'm just sort of more focused now on having fun and building things that, again, are low effort and I find useful, rather than feeling I have to, build this specific thing, and if I don't, it means that I've failed or something. So we're kind of starting back from square one. I might even take, some of these utilities that I've made and host them on goatduels.com. I still own the domain name, obviously. All the other stuff is down at this point. By the time this video goes up, if you visit goatduels.com, there won't be anything there, but maybe in the future there will be something there depending on what I build. It just won't be a GOAT format simulator. So hopefully that clears things up, or maybe it just confused everyone even more. Let me know in the comments. I wanted to warn you all about one last thing before I end this video though, and that is, please beware of scammers. And I mean that in the sense that if someone comes along, maybe it's even a figure that you trust in the Yu-Gi-Oh community, and they say, hey, I want to take Goat Duels code and finish it and turn it into this amazing simulator, and all I need to do it is $10,000 from the community. There is a 99% chance that that person is trying to scam you all. So please don't do that. And why is this most likely a scam, and why am I warning you about this? Well, for one, any sort of situation where you are paying for a product that has not actually been built yet, there is always a pretty good chance that you may never see your money again, or the product for that matter. I've seen it happen with problems like Kickstarter. Sometimes it's done maliciously, sometimes it's not, but I think in many cases it is malicious. And then secondly, guys, realize that any decent software developer is making 6 figures a year. They are living well. They are in the upper middle class of society. So if someone comes along, claims they're this amazing developer and says they need money, well, that means one of two things. Either they are lying about their skills and credentials, or they are just absolutely terrible with money. And in either case, you don't want to fund that person. Even during my work on Duels, at many points, I had people asking me like, oh, how can I contribute? How can I give you money? And I always refused to take money from people because I knew it would send the wrong message and it would just be morally wrong. So keep that in mind if you plan on, say, taking my code and working on it as well. Please don't ask the community for money. It's probably not going to go well for you. We're not talking about developing a AAA game here. You just need a couple of, decent brains and a web server. So best of luck.